All right, let's dive into one of the biggest mysteries out there, all inspired by neuroscientist Anil Seth's incredible book, Being You. And we're starting with a claim that sounds like it's straight out of science fiction. You are a controlled hallucination.
I mean, just think about that voice inside your head for a second. The one that feels like the real you. Where does that even come from? Are you actually seeing the world as it is? Or is everything you experience more like a movie being projected inside your own mind?
It's kind of a wild thought, right? Because science has cracked so many cosmic secrets. But the one puzzle that remains stubbornly out of reach? Well, it's you. Your own consciousness.
This brings us to what's famously called the hard problem of consciousness. See, the easy problems are things like figuring out how the brain processes light into an image. We're getting pretty good at that. But the hard problem is explaining why you experience anything at all. Why does the color red feel like red? Why does chocolate taste so chocolatey? Science, so far, has come up short. So Anil Seth comes along and suggests we reframe the whole question. He says, let's stop thinking about consciousness as some kind of magical soul or a ghost in the machine. What if, instead, we just treated it as a really complex biological function, one that evolved for a super practical reason, to help us stay alive?
And this biological approach leads to his first truly radical idea, a concept that's going to flip your entire understanding of reality completely on its head.
We tend to think our brain works like a camera, passively soaking up information from the outside world. But Seth argues it's the complete opposite. Your brain is an active prediction machine. This means your perception of the world isn't flowing in from the outside, it's a story being generated from the inside out. So you might be asking, well, what are my eyes and ears for then? In this model, they aren't for creating your reality, they are for checking it. Your senses are like fact checkers, constantly sending back little updates to correct any errors in the brain's ongoing guess about what's going on out there.
Check this out. You can read this sentence without any trouble, right? Even though almost every word is scrambled. How? Well, your brain isn't reading every single letter. It's predicting what the word should be based on the first and last letters. Your brain just guesses, and yep, it guessed right. This all builds up to Seth's most famous and powerful conclusion. You are not experiencing the world as it truly is. You are experiencing your brain's best guess of the world. In his words, it's a hallucination, but one that's constantly being reined in and controlled by the data coming from your senses.
Okay, so if our view of the outside world is a controlled hallucination, what about our internal world, that feeling of being me? Where does that come from? Well, it turns out the answer comes from inside our own bodies.
The key here is a process called interoception. It's a fancy word, but it just means your brain's perception of everything happening inside you. Your racing heart, your steady breathing, that feeling of hunger in your stomach. It's the brain's moment-to-moment map of your body's internal state.
So how does this turn into an emotion, like anxiety? Well, it doesn't start as a thought. First, there's a purely physical signal. Your heart starts to pound. Your palms get sweaty. Your brain detects this and makes a prediction. Hey, this physical pattern usually means there's a threat nearby. And the result of that prediction is the feeling we label as anxiety. Our emotions are literally the brain's best guess about our body's state.
This completely flips that old idea of the mind being separate from the body, like a pilot in a cockpit. As Seth so powerfully puts it, you don't have a body, you are a body. The experience of consciousness is the experience of being a living physical thing.
So that constant sense of self isn't some fixed object. It's a story. It's a continuous perception the brain creates to make sense of what it feels like to be what Seth calls a beast machine, a biological organism driven by one deep, fundamental purpose: to keep on living.
So now that we've grounded consciousness in biology, we can start to ask some really fascinating questions. Is consciousness just an on or off switch? And is it only something that humans have?
Seth says we should think about consciousness less like a light switch and more like a dimmer switch, with all sorts of different levels, and different animals probably exist at different points along that spectrum. Just think about an octopus. Most of its neurons are in its arms. What could that possibly feel like? Is it one unified self, or maybe 8 semi-independent ones? This framework also gives us a new way to think about AI. Sure, a computer can write a poem about love, but can it feel love? Seth would argue no, because it's disembodied. It's not a beast machine trying to stay alive. It can simulate the feeling, but it doesn't have the underlying biology to actually have the experience.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this mind-bending theory? This isn't just a philosophical game. Understanding consciousness this way actually has some profound and practical implications for how we live our lives.
Thinking this way can genuinely change things. First, it can lead to greater empathy. If every single person is living in their own unique, controlled hallucination, it's way easier to understand why their reality might be so different from yours. Second, it offers new insights into mental health. Conditions like anxiety could be seen as the brain's prediction machine getting stuck in a loop, over-predicting threat. And a faulty pattern is something that can be retrained. And finally, it brings a dose of intellectual humility. If your perception of reality is just your brain's best guess, it makes you a little more open to the idea that you might not have all the answers.
Now here's where it gets really empowering. Your reality is built on your brain's predictions. And where do those predictions come from? They come from your past experiences, your expectations, your beliefs. And here's the kicker. Beliefs can be changed.
So yes, you are a controlled hallucination, and your sense of self is a story your brain tells. But the most important takeaway is that you have a hand in writing that story. By changing your beliefs, you can change the predictions your brain makes. And by doing that, you can actively shape the reality you experience. You're not just a passenger along for the ride. You are the architect. The only question left is, what reality are you going to build?